The smell hit me before anything else. Roast chicken and brown butter, and something underneath it, something sweet I couldn't place. Ida Yoder had set her table with the good plates, the ones with the blue flowers around the rim, and there were 7 of us packed in around it, shoulders almost touching, and the light from the window was doing that thing it does in October, low and amber and slanted, where it catches the steam rising off a bowl and makes it look like something holy. I remember thinking the gravy was the color of old wood. Eli Yoder said the blessing. Long one. He had a voice that always dropped a full register when he was praying, like God had a different address than the rest of us. I kept my eyes closed. I was trying to. Naomi was sitting across from me. That was Ida's oldest. And I could feel her watching me even with my eyes shut, the way you can feel a window open in a room. Eli said amen. And then Naomi passed me the potatoes and said something under her breath to her mother about the butter being low, and I don't even know what set it off. Something in the way she said it. Something in her face when she turned back. I laughed. Loud. Louder than I meant to. The whole table went still. I'm Ruth. This channel is called Ruth the Amish Girl, and I grew up Old Order, Lancaster County, and I left when I was 22. If you've ever sat at a table where your own laugh turned into evidence against you, tell me in the comments. I want to know. If you're new here, subscribe. It helps more than you'd think. I need to back up a little. The Yoders were our neighbors, 3 fields over, close enough that their rooster woke us sometimes before ours did. Ida and my mother had known each other since they were girls. There was an easiness between our families, the kind you build over 30 years of borrowing flour and trading help during harvest. But Ida's husband Eli was a deacon, and that mattered. Even in neighborly things, that mattered. My mother had reminded me that morning. She didn't say it like a warning, exactly. She just said, while she was braiding my hair, "Mind yourself at Ida's table." And I'd said yes without really hearing her, the way you do when you're 17 and the morning is cold and you're thinking about other things. I was always thinking about other things. What happened after the laugh was nothing dramatic. That's the part that's hard to explain to people who didn't grow up the way I did. Eli didn't say anything. Ida didn't say anything. Naomi looked down at her plate. My mother, sitting 2 seats from me, put her hand flat on the table. Not toward me, not a touch, just a placement. And the conversation started up again like a creek going back around a stone. But I felt it. The recalibration. The way the room had decided something about me in that half second. We finished the meal. My mother and Ida washed up together, and I dried. I kept waiting for someone to say something, and no one did. And somehow that was worse. On the walk home, my mother didn't bring it up either. She talked about Ida's recipe for the sweet thing I'd smelled. It was apple butter cake, she said, and how Ida had been making it since before I was born. And I walked beside her in the dark, and the grass was wet already, and my shoes were getting damp. And I thought about saying, "Ma'am, it was just a laugh." I didn't say it. 3 days later, my Aunt Barbie came to help us with mending. Barbie was my mother's younger sister. She had a way of talking that always felt like she was setting something down on a table in front of you, clear and flat, and then standing back. She and I were alone in the front room for maybe 20 minutes. She was working on a sleeve and I was pulling thread, and she said, without looking up, "Eli mentioned you at the last meeting." I didn't answer right away. She said, "Not harshly. He just said your name. That's all he has to do, Ruth. You understand that." I said I understood. She put the sleeve down and looked at me then. She said, "The trouble with you is you're full of something and you don't know yet what it is. They know, though. They can see it before you can." I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I hadn't done anything. One laugh. One moment where something struck me as funny and my body just responded. That's all it was. But Barbie had already picked the sleeve back up. Here is the part I've thought about for years. I went back through that meal in my head so many times, trying to find what I'd done wrong, whether I'd been careless, whether I'd disrespected Eli by laughing during what was meant to be a serious moment, whether I'd embarrassed my mother. And then, maybe 2 years after I left, I was living in a small apartment, I had a job at a fabric shop. My life was nothing like what I'd grown up in. I was at a dinner party, small one, and someone told a story and I laughed, and nobody moved. Nobody recalibrated. The woman beside me laughed too, and reached over and touched my arm, like we'd been friends for decades. And I sat there for a second, just stopped. Because that was the first time I understood that the silence at Ida Yoder's table had not been about me being too much. It had been about me being noticed at all. That is what they were managing. Not the sound. The fact that there was a person at that table who could produce a sound like that. Unplanned, unguarded, coming up from somewhere below any decision. And that person was going to be very difficult to keep. Eli hadn't mentioned my name because I'd been rude. He'd mentioned my name because Barbie was right. They could see it before I could. I still think about Ida's table sometimes. The blue flowered plates, the gravy, the light through that window. There was something real there. Something I'm not going to flatten into a lesson or a loss. It was a beautiful table. The food was good. My mother's hand was 3 feet from mine. I just couldn't stop being who I was inside it. I don't know if Naomi ever thinks about that afternoon. I don't know if she noticed the laugh at all, or if it was only ever the men in the room who kept score. I've wondered about that. What I know is this. Somewhere in Lancaster County, there is probably a 17-year-old girl at a table right now, pressing her mouth flat, swallowing something down, and she doesn't know yet what she's swallowing. I just hope she finds out before I did. If you've ever been the person at the table who was too much, or even just enough, just barely enough to make the room go quiet, tell me about it in the comments. I read all of them. And if you're new here, subscribe. There are more stories where this one came from.